Okay, now let's take a look at the life cycle of business or the life cycle of organizations of any kind, including, by the way, countries. Organizations go through very predictable phases of growth and development. They go through a series of phases that we could call the growing phases, and then they go through a series of phases that we could call the aging phases. And what I want to do is I want to just describe to you this life cycle of organizations. As the organization starts and begins to build its strength, its vitality, its future potential, and then how as time goes on it begins to age and it goes down the hill, down the curve, losing its strength, vitality, and future potential. The first phase of an organization's growth is called courtship. And it's called courtship because there is no business. All there is an idea, a thought. This business, if you will, is a gleam in some entrepreneur's eye. And what happens? You think about this. They have these people who start organizations have lots of ideas. They have one idea and another idea and another idea, but some of those ideas are sticky and they try to put it down and they just can't put it down because, gee, it's so beautiful, and they pick it up and they look at it some more and they try to put it down, now it's back, and pretty soon they find themselves waking up in the middle of the night and there's that idea kind of rotating in three-dimensional space above their head as they get focused on and captured by this new idea of this new business. After a while, they've kind of worked on some things themselves, try to plan it and whatever, but pretty soon they can't help themselves. They got to talk to someone else. They come up to someone else, and they kind of tell them what their idea is, and that other person gets excited. And now we got this great little conversation. Pretty soon there's 3 or 4 people. There's a lot of convincing talk going on among this group of people. Who are they trying to convince? You got it. They're trying to convince themselves. They're trying to convince themselves that this organization will work, that this idea has potential. And the reason that they're working so hard on this is they know that there is some risk between where we are in this courtship to where we want to go. There is some risk. And sometimes the risk is just as simple as I got to tell my mother-in-law or my wife about this thing or my husband about it. But often what the risk is I'm going to have to hawk my house or borrow some money or quit my job or whatever. So there's risk between this courtship phase and the infant phase. Now, what's going on during the courting phase is the building of energy. And how successful it is, well, that just depends. But you all remember courting, don't you? Remember walking along the beach, whispering sweet nothings in each other's ears, lying to one another? Oh, I don't mean lying with malice aforethought. I just mean that what we're really doing is we're dreaming. And when you're dreaming, it may not come out just the way you thought it was going to be. I remember my first business. A group of us got together in my living room in San Antonio, Texas, and we talked about this business that we were going to have. You know, after we sold that business and we sat down and we thought about it, almost nothing that we said that day in that living room in San Antonio came true, except we were going to start a business, we were going to have some fun, and we were going to make some money. All the details, we kind of had a lot of them wrong. We thought these people would be our customers. Well, one of them was, but after that, we couldn't sell that product again. You know, we had an idea that these people would loan us money. Nobody loaned us money. You get the idea? It was different. And in fact, what was important was the commitment that we got that day that we were going to do this thing, that we were going to move forward, and that this idea was going to work. What role do you suppose, P-A-E or I, is dominant during this courtship phase? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's the entrepreneurial role. This is a big E time. Oh, there's got to be a little P and a little A and a little I. Why? Because these are the catalysts. These are the things that take that big E and make it happen. If there is no E, if there's nothing but E, it's just kind of an affair. It's just kind of a lot of messing around and no commitment. The reality is, if you're going to make that E work, you've got to have a little bit of P, a little bit of A, a little bit of I. There's going to be some work, there's got to be some straight thinking about it, and there's some plans, and there's probably got to be some concerns about who the people are. Now, if in fact that idea is truly a courtship, and if we get enough energy, and if we try it, we end up leaping through a paper wall into the next phase, which is called infancy. Now, why do I say leaping through a paper wall? Oh, and what's the tricky part about leaping through a paper wall? You got it. You don't know what's on the other side. But that's what you end up having to do with a business. You got to take a chance. You leap through the paper wall. And I didn't say poke a hole in it and peek through. I said leap through it. You know, feet are off the ground before you find out what's on the other side. Oh, this is a lot more exciting if you've seen other people leap through paper walls and there's long, and you've heard long wailing sounds afterward, or you've seen the splash of blood or heard the sound of wolves. You get the idea? But anyway, you make that leap of faith. That's what it always is to get that business going. And guess what? Boom! Now you're in the infant phase. All of that E stuff we did, you know, feet up, sitting around thinking about what we were going to do and trying to create plans, that's all gone now, because what is it time to do now? It is time to P. P becomes dominant. We don't have time for E anymore, because now the focus of that business is on what did you sell for me lately. Everybody's out in the field. We're hard charging, trying to make things go. This is an infant business. You all remember babies, don't you? What do you do for a baby? You got it. You do everything. You do absolutely everything. It's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job. What do you do for an infant business? Same thing. You see, the interesting thing about this little baby that you've given birth to is that every 3 or 4 hours it cries out for food. It goes, cash. And it's kind of neat in the beginning because you may have some. So you say, sure, here, have some. And it goes, cash. And you say, wait a minute, I just fed you. And then it goes, cash. You get the idea. It gets a little demanding. This baby needs to be fed. I like to liken this a new business as a hole, 25 meters across. This is a big hole. You walk up, you look down. Guess what is down there? There is a Chinese guy waving at you. If you can see so far, there is sky down there. That's how deep this hole is. And guess what? That's where your money is going. That's where your time, your effort, your energy is going, because on top of that hole is a fan, 65,000 horsepower. It is blowing down. And you can step back from it a quarter of a mile away. You take a dollar bill out of your pocket, it goes right in there. You take another one out of your pocket, it goes in there. You can open your wallet or your purse, those dollars just pour into that thing. That little thing is demanding of your time, of your people, of your relationships, and certainly of your money. That's an infant business. The battle for infancy is just to survive. We've got to pee enough, we've got to sell enough, that sometime we get to the point where we've actually got month left at the end. I mean, we've got money left at the end of our month rather than the other way around. So that's the battle. If you don't win that battle, of course, this business is going to suffer infant mortality. Now, if on the other hand you're able to make it through this stage, if you're able to work hard enough and make things happen, guess what? You move on. You've developed big P. You've got now big P, small a, small e, small I in infancy. What happens next? What happens next is pretty simple. That E begins to grow again. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of show you, and I have to stand up to demonstrate this to you. I want to show you physically what is really happening as this organization moves from this infant phase to what we call the GoGo phase. A time when the business gets its E back and it begins to expand, it begins to grow, it begins to get more and more successful. Okay, now let me demonstrate for you this transition from infant to GoGo. The infant business is like a person standing with their feet together. When I stand this way, how vulnerable am I to being knocked over? You got it. It's pretty easy to knock me over. This infant business, if I were really to do this right, I would take off some of my clothes, certainly be barefoot, but there are some things I don't do for demos, even in videos, all right? But what I'm trying to say is infant businesses don't have much. And the last thing is I would be standing right on a rock. You know what that rock is? That rock is my customer. Or my customers, right? And that rock, my little toes are hanging onto that thing like crazy because every customer is so, so, so important to me. Anyway, so here I am standing with my feet together. I've got this little infant business. Now, in the beginning, when we first started, remember we went from an E in the courtship phase to P dominating in the infant phase. And actually, this is fairly easy for an entrepreneur to do because you know what the profile, the personality profile of the typical entrepreneur is, the one that is successful, the true successful business founder? They're usually PEs, big P, small a, big E, small I. You know why? because if you're not both P and E, you don't get through the first few phases of the development of a business. So here we have a person who's kind of got two sides of their personality, a P side and an E side. And during the entrepreneurial phase, the courtship phase, that E side is pretty dominant. The E, if you will, my E conscience is saying, this is great. I got another great idea. Think about this, think about this. And we're kind of favoring that side of my personality. On the other side, once we get into the infants phase, the P side takes over saying, wait a minute, we got to sell something, we got to get out in the field, we got to make things happen. We don't have time for that chit-chat stuff, right? So that side of my personality, if you will, is being favored. And think about it. Who actually starts the coming up with the ideas of a business? Who is the first person to do the E-ing? It's the founder. And who is the first person to go into the field and often make the first sale? It's the founder. That's that shift that we're talking about. But now we're ready for another shift. So here we have the founder watching this little business grow. Now, just so you won't get emotionally involved in this story, let's assume I'm in the potato chip business. What's my little potato chip business like? It's pretty simple. I have got a rented space, I have got a cooker, I have got a bagger, and I may have a hole in the wall through which I sell potato chips. You got the idea. Very simple little business, right? That's where I am standing with my feet together. What happens is that business gets a little more successful. Pretty soon that E side, which has been always saying, hey, I've got an idea, I've got an idea, I've got an idea, kind of gets out of the bag, so to speak. And one evening, late at night, things are going pretty good. I think to myself, shoot, what other idea could we do? And it comes to me pretty easily. Gee, why don't we put barbecue sauce on these potato chips? Now, why is that so unique? What have I had up to now? I've had Jerry's potato chips. What are these? Regular potatoes. Eventually, these will be called classic. But right now, these are Jerry's regular potato chips, right? And they're in a medium-sized bag because I don't have time for different sized bags. So here is my business. But now I think, why not put barbecue sauce on some of these potato chips? It's pretty easy to do. I get some stickers and put barbecue on those same bags, and put some little barbecue sauce on the potato chips. Everything is going to be fine. And my feet are now about an inch apart because now I'm in the regular and barbecue potato chips in medium-sized bags business. Now what happens? How long do you think it takes me to have another idea once that entrepreneurial drive is out of the bag? You got it. That thing is out of the bag now, and I'm going to have lots more ideas. Pretty soon it's sour cream and onion potato chips. Now my feet are 3 inches apart. And it's going to be Cajun style potato chips, or it's going to be different sized bags, or maybe we're now going to have dip, and how about pretzels? You're getting the idea of how this thing spreads. Well, what's happening now is, how does that business feel? Well, now, look, I've got that nice athletic stance that my football coach used to tell me about. I'm pretty stable. I'm feeling pretty strong. The leader of the organization is feeling very strong. In fact, what we really should do is picture that person standing like this, red S on their chest, a cape blowing in the background, wind in their face, and believing that they can leap tall buildings in a single bound. Huge amount of confidence. How do the people in the organization feel about their leaders? You got it. They've got a huge amount of faith in their leaders. So here we have this energized, exciting GoGo organization. Now, interestingly enough, that this organization may have some challenges along the way, but let's just talk about the growth part. Do you suppose it stops here when I'm nice like this? No, no. Here I am and I get another idea because I'm so confident. You know, I think we got all these trucks. We ought to go into trucking. And we ought to have popcorn and cheese balls. And you know, there's on these shelves that we put our product on, there's these little specialty things like olives and onions and whatever. We might as well have those. And we got software that we've actually developed to manage our trucks. We might as well sell that. And shoot, you know, we should no longer be doing stuff in little stands. We ought to be selling in the big stores. So now we move into that. And not only that, we ought to own our own real estate now. And so we move into bigger space. And what's happening in this organization during this time? Are we hiring people carefully? No, you better believe we're not. It's an exciting place. Everything is a priority. Everything is urgent. all kinds of harem-scarum going on as we try to adapt to the new things that are going on. Not much A in this organization, remember? Big P, big E, small a, small I, right? So here we go. It keeps going. Now we think, geez, we ought to not only own our own real estate, we got a little extra real estate, we ought to build a health club on some of that real estate. And not only that, maybe what we ought to do is we ought to put in a parking structure while we're at it. And maybe we can sell another product. We can go into aseptically packaged drinks, and we can do, listen, before we go too much further, I got to ask you a question, and I think we better do this because this floor is getting kind of slippery. Here's the question. How easy is it to knock me over now? You got it. It's real easy to knock me over. Notice what happened in GoGo. If I can get back up here. What happened in GoGo is we started too narrow and we ended up too broad. This is common in the GoGo phase, and that rampant growth stretches every person in that organization. The presidents of GoGo organizations, and in fact GoGo organizations themselves, love to talk about how fast they're growing. They're not too worried about how much money they're making, but growth is such a big deal. And it's a very kind of testosterone-driven time for an organization, this GoGo phase. As we're going through the GoGo phase, we are building the risk in the organization. We're often taking on more debt, and that's where the risk is coming from. And we're also expanding. We're coming up with lots of new ideas. Not all of those ideas are going to be so good. Much like we're hiring lots of people, not all of those people are going to be able to stay with that organization over the long period of time. So we're building up, if you will, a lot of baggage. We kind of like to say that during the GoGo phase, organizations create about 100 problems or 10 years worth of problems to solve. And in fact, they will be solving those problems for the next 10 years. One of the key problems that comes up during this phase, or can come up sometime during GoGo and maybe even into the next phase, is something called the founder's trap. The founder's trap is a trap that a business falls into if the founder doesn't learn how to delegate. E. See, founders delegate P and A really well. That's hard work and detail stuff. You want to come in early, leave late, and work like crazy? You can do that. You want to take care of the books? You can do that. Thank God someone wants to do that. Oh, and you want to think? I'm sorry, that's my job. You get the idea? No delegation of E. Unless the organization begins to delegate the E, that E will become restricted as we go further along the life cycle. So we've got to be a little bit careful of the founder's trap. You could say that the GoGo phase is the terrible twos of the business world. Everybody remember 2-year-olds? Little accidents going somewhere to happen. I want you to know that when my first son got to be about 2 years old, he had 2 responses to everything. He either ate it or broke it. And that's what's going on within this GoGo organization. What do we need to do? We need to mature that organization a little bit. And now it's time to move onward. What role do you think it's time to develop more of now? You got it. A, it's time to get our act together. It's time to get a little under control. It's time to kind of sort things out and learn the magic word for 2-year-olds, which is what? No. We've got to learn what not to do. In fact, it's harder for GoGo organizations to decide what not to do than it is for them to decide what to do, which is why they do so many different things. So it's time to try to build A. Now here's the trick. In order to develop A at this point, you're going to have to give up either P or A, or give up some of P and A. There's a long story for this and we don't have time for it now, but just trust me, you're going to have to give up on P or E. Which one are you going to give up on? Well, the most common response is, let's give up the E. You remember E, right? It's the thing that caused you to be so spread out. Well, so what people do is they give up on the E. The single most common mistake that businesses make. Think about this. If we've got big P and we want to develop A, so now we're going to go big A, and we're going to let the E go down, small e, and we've already got small I. Haven't we talked about this already? Big P, big A, small e, small I. We call this premature aging. And it is the most common trap that businesses fall into. 50, 60, 70, probably 60 to 70% of businesses move in this direction to premature aging. What it really means is what we've got to do if we're going to make it into this next stage, which we call adolescence, and if we're going to make it through that stage, is we've got to learn to balance E and A and allow some of that P orientation to decline. Now, I'm not saying that sales should fall off dramatically or whatever. I'm saying management focus should move more to E and A. And really what we need to do is take the E and turn it inward. Turn the E into how do we make the organization better, not just bigger. And if, in so doing, the A and the E will in fact begin to get in more and more conflict. And in fact, that's one of the great challenges of this new phase of adolescence. Adolescence, small p, big A, big E, small I. So one of the key characteristics of adolescence is conflict. Conflict between the old guys and the new guys. Conflict between the department heads. Conflict between the A's and the E's. The E's are saying, let's roll the dice again. We've got momentum. We got to keep going. And the A's are saying, let's stop doing this. Let's quit doing that. Let's quit doing this. Let's get ourselves a little organized. Let's slow down. Oh, by the way, who's right? To some degree, they both are. The trick now is to begin to balance A and E. So you've got conflict. The other real challenge and common problem for an adolescent organization is what business should we be in and what risk should we really be taking? And this becomes the dialogue. In fact, in adolescence, the healthy adolescent businesses take E and apply it to A. What I mean by that is they take E and begin to get organized. They start to get organized by having a mission statement or a strategy or goals and objectives. You know, these things which take creativity to develop actually have a balancing and conservative effect on the organization because it helps put us in the direction that we want to go in. I should tell you that the conflict in an adolescent organization can get so great that there's often a divorce. And who's the divorce between? The divorce is between the E's and the A's. Oh, and who do you suppose buys who out? Often, surprisingly enough, the A's buy the E's. Because the A's have got charts and graphs. They've got one business that they really want to be in. They've been taking a lot of the wrath of the E's for a long period of time. Oh, and now there's lots more of those A's, so they get together, they do lunch, they create plans, and they say, all we got to do is find somebody who speaks A, our language, and has money. Now, who could that be? Oh, it's the banker. So they go into the banker and they say to him, A? And the banker goes, A. I know it sounds like two Canadians talking, but really, these are the A's getting together. They get the money, they go back to the entrepreneur and they say, hey, we want to buy you out. And he goes, what? Haven't we been having a great time here? And the A's say, actually, no, because we've been kind of taking the brunt of your kind of, you know, phlegmatic personality all this time. You attack us on a regular basis. You don't really respect us. You don't listen to us, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you got the idea. And the E says, well, you know, if we're going to fight all the time, this isn't as fun as it used to be. And besides, I've got a better idea I've been thinking about anyway, how much you're going to pay me. And this starts the process. Anyway, one of the great challenges at this stage is the potential for divorce. But if we can get that group of people to learn how to manage together, to manage as a team, if we can get them concentrated and behind a common strategy and vision of the organization, that organization will move to prime. And the prime phase, that's the nirvana of the business world. All of a sudden, we've got all these letters kind of in balance. P, A, E are all strong. I often measures a little weak, but it is really strong. It's strong in the background. It's strong in the bond that the people have and the commitment we have to the strategy. So you can either score this capital letters P, A, E, and I, or P, A, E, and a little bit of I, depending upon how you want to look at it. But anyway, what is the trick in prime? Often people. Getting enough people. The book Good to Great was written really focused on getting people into that prime phase, because now is a time you got to have all kinds of good people in that bus that's your organization. The other thing that we know is that there are two big challenges in business. One is getting to prime, and the other one is staying there. Because once you're in prime, Mother Nature is now against you. The people feel a little more confident. You now have a substantial market share, and you feel pretty confident in that. The people themselves are getting a little older. They've got more to risk. They've got more to lose. They're not willing to take more risks. And in the prime organizations, what you begin to hear is words like, you know, we used to have to take chances like that. Well, what's going down? What's declining? You've got it. E. E begins to decline. Now you've got big P, big A, small e, and the I appears to get even stronger. Now what is really happening is that the people in that organization have decided we're not going to fight anymore. We're the team. If we hang in here together, we can carry this thing through our retirement. This is fabulous. And so guess what? The rule becomes don't make waves. Everything is fine. We sit in the boardrooms with the pictures of the founders looking down off the walls at us, in our beautiful leather chairs and deep carpets and heavy drapes. Big sign on the wall, don't make waves, everything is fine. And we've always been powerful, and we get older. We age. We slow down. We get more happy with where we are. And we move into a phase called stable. And during this stable phase, big P, big A, small e, big I, lots of things are happening. We go from building momentum to riding inertia. We go from going after what we want to taking what we can get. And the other rule is don't make waves, everything is fine. If that happens, remember the old rule, today's E is tomorrow's P? Right after stable comes a phase called aristocracy. With the E down, the next thing to go down is the P. And so now we have small p, big A, small e, big I. And what we are doing now is the leaders of the organization are watching the organization decline. But it still feels pretty good because guess what? We've got lots of cash. We invest our money in systems and facilities and hard assets. Our methods of continuing to show greater and greater profitability are now not conquering new markets. What we now try to do is raise prices and cut costs. Oh, when that's done, we cut costs and raise prices, and then we raise prices and cut costs again. Oh, and once in a while, we do an acquisition. We grab a young GoGo type of organization and bring them into the fold. Notice that what is happening, raising prices, cutting costs, doing acquisitions, the financial people are getting more and more power because guess what? They're good at those three things. The marketing people kind of begin to take a back seat in the organization, and we build a bureaucracy so we can control everything. We invest more in our systems, and we continue the denial. Everything is fine. We've always been the great organization. We will do great. And the slide continues. It continues until sometime in the board meeting, someone can't handle it anymore. They turn to the person next to them and they say, wait a minute, we're in real trouble. Pass it on. And guess what? That person passes it on to the next one, the next one, the next one, and it goes through the boardroom like a tsunami wave. We're in trouble, we're in trouble, we're in trouble, we're in trouble. Goes to the second to last person in the room who realizes, whoops, if I tell Joe here, we're not going to have anybody to blame, and he passes it back. Joe did it, Joe did it, Joe did it, Joe did it. And this starts the early bureaucracy phase of that organization's growth. The I has now come down. We are now small p, big A, small e, small I. And what we really are beginning to do is we're looking for the scapegoat. We're looking for the people who have caused the problem. And what do we do then? Oh, we bring him in. We're going to have a Joe party. Joe, come on in here. We get him in. We take out our knives. We hack him up. And we throw the body outside. We may even put a big sign out there. Here lies Joe. He's the one who caused the problem. We do press releases. We know we had a little bit of a problem, but things are fixed now. We get the PR guys in there to let us know that everything is fine, because really what we've done is we got rid of Joe. You can come and see the body for yourself. And what do we really change? Nothing. And if we change nothing, the decline continues. And if you think about it, once the battle for individual survival is what is driving every person in the organization. Once everybody is walking around looking for someone else to blame and trying to cover their own tush, what is really with a chance that that business is going to succeed? 2 chances, slim and none. And in fact, that business is going to die. Unless, of course, your organization is big enough and vital to the nation's economy, and then the government is going to come in and save you. They will rescue you. And if they do that, who does the government send in to help you? The biggest A's you've ever seen. So we're now going to really control things, layering more, if you will, overhead on top of the overhead. And that's when a bottle of beer gets to the point where it costs about $43.50. You get the idea. And what is the profile now? 0A00. 0A00. And that organization is going to be that way until someone pulls the plug. What is the real prescription? What really should you do for that organization? Probably euthanasia. And that is not a foreign exchange program for kids. You get the idea? Someone ought to pull the plug and let that business die. Or let it find its own way. But in any case, what we've just talked about is the life cycle of business. Your business, the company you work at, the company you lead, is somewhere in that life cycle. And here's the interesting thing. From every place in that life cycle, there is a prescription for how you get to prime. There are steps you can take to go to prime. Whether you're over the hill too much, whether you're prematurely aged, or whether you're just in adolescence trying to make the shift, or in GoGo trying to make the shift. You better start by figuring out where your organization is, because this life cycle is predictable. The phases are predictable, and at each stage we have predictable problems.